Welcome to the Nuclear Frog, Snail channel. And this time I got something different for you. This magic artifact. No, this is live. There are no post-processing video effects here. It actually emits that sound, which is pretty loud. I don't know how well you can hear it through the camera microphone, but this is about as loud as my voice when I speak. Which is just about as loud as I want to hear it, as I want to have it, so that I can do magic spells and all that on LARP while using this. Most of the techniques and design philosophies I'm about to show you in this video can be used for creating not just magic artifacts, but also, for example, futuristic cyberpunk scanners or what have you. Basically any sort of electronics-based props for LARP or similar applications. I will show you its features and I will show you how I made it. Although this video is not a full tutorial, it's just more of a how I made it with hopefully some inspiration and insights and new techniques for you. Alright, so it feels a lot better putting it down to show you the details because it weighs 2 kilograms and also electronics might fall out as soon as I start opening it. Anyway, so the parts we have here, this top plate as well as the bottom plate with the frog logo, those are electro etched. So my girlfriend made this logo and I've electro etched it onto aluminum plates. Those are held with epoxy on the rest, which is a wood frame. You can see the lid has shifted a bit here. Actually, it's supposed to be like this, not revealing the wood, and it holds in place well enough. I'll show you the lid in just a sec. So everything else is made out of wood, this entire box. Then it was covered with plastidip and some silver paint. Now, those of you who watch my channel know how religious I am about applied design stuff, so this is why you see some complementary contrast here, red and green, and also some material contrast. You have crystal, which is, by the way, worbla crystal art. You have metal, you have fake metal, which I hope looks well enough as real metal. You have leather, so you have multiple materials. In the making of pictures which we're about to see, you will also see how bad it looks without that material contrast, with it all being just metal. Anyway, you can see that here is a small slot. If we hold it up to the light, you can see there is some air, and that allows the sound to escape from the speaker which is inside of this. As I've said, here is the switch. It doesn't take a lot of force, but it's still protected by those ribs here, so it doesn't have a lot of chance to be accidentally triggered. And it's right here where the leather ends, so that I know where it is. Supposed to stay there. Stay there, goddammit. Now, this is the back side. And I've already kind of shown you the lid. The lid is held in place sturdily enough that it doesn't open by itself. What you've seen before that it wasn't quite in place was because I hastily closed and opened it for another take of this video. Now I can start shifting it with some force. Difficult with one hand, and there we go. So this is the lid. As you see, it's plywood. That's a magnet. That's also a magnet. These hold to this nut just because it didn't have another magnet. Well, and another magnet. So it just had 3 magnets. And also it's held in place with that Velcro. So the magnets help it snap in place precisely. And the Velcro is actually what's doing most of the job of actually holding it in place. It's industrial grade Velcro, like really, really super sturdy. And there is all the electronics inside of it. Now, the reason for this lid is obviously because I need to access those electronics to recharge the batteries and to turn them off overnight when I'm at LARP and stuff like this. Basically, you need to access the electronics in this. I will not unravel this cable salad now. I will show it to you in the making of section of the video. So let's close the lid back down. Snaps in place just like this. Adjust it just a tiny bit. Make sure no wood is showing. Now, at first I feared that this kind of a connection wouldn't be sturdy enough, but trust me, it is. I mean, you couldn't put it on the ground and slide on it and expect it not to open or something like this. And generally you cannot do like super duper stunts with this, but this turned out surprisingly sturdy for something that I did not make with sturdiness in mind. I think it could survive a drop or two. Not that I would want it to drop, because it was a lot of work. And this worbla crystal art, it's actually kind of soft. It's like, not really soft, it's kind of like soft plastic. That's what it feels like. All right? And if you look closely, you can still see those gaps in here. Like you could see the Velcro in there just barely. Come on, refocus camera. There we go. That's why I've added some rust there to make it look like, you know, like it's part of that stone and crystal construction. So first of all, I will briefly talk about the electronics, and then I will talk about and show you how I made the shell, which I made entirely on my own, with the help of my girlfriend who designed the frog logo. So the electronics in here are the spectacle kit provided to me for free by SparkFun. So this spectacle kit is something you can buy in America and Europe. It's relatively cheap and it works great for beginners. I'm saying great, not perfect, because there were some shortcomings and bugs that I ran into and had to work my way around it. There was some amount of frustration involved. However, knowing how complicated actual electronics are, like programming an Arduino and programming languages and all that, I have no idea about all of that, which is why they've sent me the kit. Because I, for some reason, looked like I don't know a lot about electronics, I guess, which is the case. So this kit is good for starting. Here is a nice note from Nick Poole, with whom I had a lot of contact over Facebook. He was very helpful. So they've sent me this kit for free, including all of this. These are the spectacle kit boards, which are connected with these cables, and some additional stuff to put onto it, such as this LED strip, and also some buttons with micro switches and some power banks. They even sent me some additional power banks, realizing that these ones were not perfect for the job, so that was very thoughtful of them. A micro SD card with an adapter. Now this is some servo motors which I did not use. So the two of the boards I didn't use, the servo I didn't use, and the inertia board I didn't use. Inertia board detects when you're moving or when your prop is moving and can send signals which trigger other things. For example, when it's moving anywhere, light up LED strip number 1, which would be this. I will not go in depth on how this whole spectacle SparkFun thing works, because on their website there is an extensive documentation and it does the job. I will just get to my verdict on this. So my verdict on this is the support and the interhuman communication with SparkFun was 5 out of 5 stars, at least in my experience. Nick was honest, Nick was helpful. They also asked for feedback, which I gave a lot of to Nick. And this being an honest video where I didn't promise to just praise the product and that's it, I will also tell you some of the shortcomings. So it's 4 out of 5 stars. It's the 20% of effort gives you the 80% of result kind of thing. Like with any kind of kit, you will have to sacrifice some flexibility and some power. So the shortcomings I've ran into were that the audio board, whose programming interface I'm going to show you here. So this is the programming interface of the whole thing. Again, it's documented on their site. I will not go into detail of this, but this audio board was not able to do a simple thing such as play an audio file when I press the button and play it until I press it again. So stop playing it when I press the button again. I had to trick around that by using a virtual board, which is actually a pretty cool thing to do all sorts of tricks in the system. And I basically had to do some brain-breaking things to make this work. Now, the lights board, it worked pretty straightforward, exactly as planned. It has some really cool effects pre-programmed, which will serve the most purposes. The only problem I ran with into this is that even with additional power, when running 3 LED strips, I did notice that the LED strips were not able to provide the maximum power output. That said, the whole thing is still pretty damn bright. So, like, again, you have to sacrifice something if you're using an easy-to-use kit. So for that reason, it's still 4 stars and not less. You can head to sparkfun.com/spectacle and you will be able to read and watch some videos about the whole kit. And you can buy it in America and in Europe. In Europe, some stores resell them, so you don't have to import it. This was my verdict of the SparkFun Spectacle kit. Now let's see how I've set it up in this electronics setup video and move on with this build. Alright, let's take a look at the setup. It might seem a bit confusing at first, especially if you throw it all in one pile, but really it is relatively simple, at least simpler than it looks. So here's the audio cable with which you program the director board. This is the director board, which has its own power source, which powers the entire system. So this is the main power source, just an energy bank, and the director board continues on with this 3.5mm jacked cable to the button board, which has one button attached to it. Then the button board is connected to the LED board, which is connected to the 3 LED stripes and has its own additional power source because LEDs otherwise eat too much energy. You can run it with just this main power bank if you have just one LED, but if you have multiple, it's better to have a separate as an addition. So the LED board then goes out of this and into the audio board, which is the final station here. Now here you can see some glue tape that holds in place the SD or micro SD or whatever its face card slot, because I was so much of a caveman that I accidentally almost broke it off, so it needs to be pressed down now. Works fine as long as that tape is there. And the audio board goes into this signal amplifier, which has its own battery within it, and it has 2 3.5mm out ports. So those go to the hamburger speaker, which SparkFun provided me with, as well as this large Anchor sound core, which I have bought additionally because it just provides a lot more sound. So let's turn this system on one last time on the video for you before I put it into a housing. So here's the button. Here are the LED strips. I'm going to down regulate the aperture on the camera so it's a bit darker in here. There we go. 3, 2, 1, magic! Just for the comparison, just a small speaker now. Sounds a lot shallower, especially regarding the bass. Turning on the big speaker additionally now. A lot better, huh? I mean, you cannot really judge the sound quality of this because it's going into my camera's rather modest microphone and then it's being played by your speakers, so there is a lot of distortion. But trust me, with the big speaker, and especially in the combination with the 2 speakers and with the signal amplifier, it really drives the audio home. Because on LARP you cannot really do the audio, in post-production. It has to play in that exact moment. Unless you want to be doing telling, like, oh, you hear a mighty magic sound. Like, no, I want to play the mighty magic sound. And yeah, this part was necessary because the audio board does not have a preamplifier as far as I know. And as far as I could tell, I might be wrong, but anyway, it was a bit too quiet for me. So this signal preamplifier does a good job of providing, a better signal to those speakers. Now let's make a housing and put it all in. So it all starts with a Fusion 360 sketch. Fusion 360 is a CAD program, also CAM and all that. It's basically a program where you can design stuff. So here it is. Here is the top plate. So this helps a lot because I've designed this from scratch. I didn't know where I was going, and I was able to eliminate a lot of problems and find a lot of solutions just here. So this is the sketch for the whole thing. Out of that, I've printed out these properly sized patterns just on a regular printer paper, and then I've used some adhesive spray to stick them onto pieces of thin plywood. Well, it's not that thin actually, like 1/2 centimeter, relatively thin. Then I've cut out the patterns on my scroll saw, resulting in this. This part would have been a lot faster if I already had my CNC running, which I almost have running now, not quite yet. But this worked out with a scroll saw just as good for the purpose. It just took a lot more time. Now what I'm doing here is I've scratched off some black spray paint because I've spray painted the insides black. So by the insides, I mean these parts you're looking at are this surface as well as this surface, so in between there, so it doesn't look like wood in there. And these are those wooden spacers. So those are these small, neat, round pieces here. They don't have to be neat and round, so just, clobber them together really fast on the scroll saw. And I use epoxy, 2-component epoxy glue. And now you see the two plates, one on top of another, and my kettlebell sitting on top of it. Now my epoxy already holds after 5 minutes and fully hardens out after, I don't know, 2 hours or so. But after 5 minutes, it's already, solid enough to continue working on it. So this is the top two plates. So here is where the large speaker is going to be having contact, and here is where the small speaker is going to be having contact. So they will be pointing out in the direction away from us, and the sound will be able to escape through this slot right here. So it's this right here. There is an air gap. Now I'm continuing to assemble the whole thing. It's basically layers on top of layers, on top of other layers. And all the parts that don't have to be neat and nice and will not be seen anyway, I just took something that does the job, wasting no time on making it look pretty. So these spacers are the main spacers of the construction. So that's what it looks like. I don't know what to comment on this. It's just, using what I scroll sawed for assembling it into layers. And here I also apply some epoxy, and I've used epoxy for basically everything. I didn't use a single screw for this, I think. So after I pop those two together, my kettlebell sits on top of it once again, and this is the result, looking like some sort of a Roman amphitheater or something, or some sort of a Greek building, I don't know. So now I'm also adding some spacers in between the handle halves, so that the handle has some structural integrity to it. And for that I just used appropriately thick MDF pieces with this white stuff right here that is just some double-sided adhesive tape or carpet tape, and that is sufficient to hold it in between those plates. Didn't bother with epoxy, like where should it go with two pieces of tape there, and me basically holding it pressed a lot of time. And there is also going to be wrapping. So here is the magnet system. What I did here is just drill a large hole around the size of the magnet, like a millimeter larger maybe, and sinking the magnet in so it's flush, and then pouring some epoxy on top of it so it stays inside. I did the same here, and it doesn't go all the way through this plate. It is like just a fraction of a millimeter short of going through the plate. Here it is. Next step, I use my power file, which is a miniature belt sander for those of you who don't know, to sand in some small recesses into this top frame right here, because that's where I want my Velcro to go. So the Velcro has some thickness, and I want to hide that thickness down there. And I do the same for the lid. So here it is. So here is some Velcro on the lid, and here is some Velcro on the frame. And that Velcro holds it real strong. Now this mirror foil right here, I wanted to use it originally, but then later down the line I realized that it doesn't work for assembly. It would have been almost impossible to put the LED strips on top of this once the crystal was done. And there wasn't much need for it anyway, but that was the original cool idea. Ended up ditching it. Here I've sanded the corners a bit, just to make the whole thing look a bit more organic. It's not complete here with the sanding, just somewhere in between, you know. I didn't sand it all, actually, to be honest, as much as I probably should have, because I hate sanding. If I had sanded it all to an appropriate amount, I would have probably didn't need so much plastidip down the line, but whatever. And here is a picture of my stepfather wearing the frog hood. Now, as one of the next steps, I just spray it from the side with this chrome. Even if it says gold on it, it's like the brand name or line of paints name, whatever, but it's actually silver chrome. I've sprayed it on the sides here, in case something is visible through the crystal, so that it doesn't look like wood through the crystal. Looks like this, and this is the epoxy right here. So that actually looks like metal when covered in this metallic spray. And after I sprayed this, I use my awl to put some holes into this side, into this butt, like this, to give it a bit more of a contact surface, because I will be gluing the crystal later on right here, and I want it to have some surface to grab. Now here I've used my scroll saw yet again to saw out this piece for the lid. It's going to be a real aluminum decoration for the lid, as well as for the backside, whatever you call that, of the artifact. And here I'm using the scalpel to painstakingly peel off all the pieces of this frog logo stencil. This step took so much effort. It's unbelievable. It would have taken me so much less if I again had my CNC already running, which I didn't have back then. So here, peeling off, peeling off, peeling off. After I was done peeling, after like 3 hours for both of the sides, I did some electrical etching. And while it's etching, I was putting in this micro switch. If you wonder why it's called the micro switch, why the micro, it's just because it's small. What it does is being a switch, basically. That's the trigger switch for the whole thing. For that, I've sandwiched it in between two plates of plywood, so it fits right in between the handles. And this right here is again some double-sided adhesive tape, and it's just stuck in there like this. That's all there is to it. Here is the teeny weeny button that I used to trigger the device, and this wire right here, it goes into this small hole, which is just big enough to let the wire through, and it goes onto the inside of the electronics chamber. All there is to it. Then I use this piece of ABS plastic, which is flexible. It's a 1 millimeter thickness, and it's sturdy enough for what I'm doing here, but at the same time it still bends. So that's what I'm gonna be using.
I use again some double-sided adhesive tape to just fixate this piece of ABS inside onto those spacers. And that's what it looks like then. I've curved it nicely onto the inside of this, so about here where this barely visible X is, that's where the trigger button is. And I've adjusted it so it sits just firmly enough to be comfortable for triggering. And I use my heat gun to anneal it so that it relieves all the tension from it, so it just sits there nicely and comfortably, not wanting to bend itself straight. That's the inside of the handle right here. It's so bright so you can see the black ABS piece. I've used this just to cover up the inside of the handle so it doesn't look empty. And what I did here is cut out this vinyl stencil kind of thing. It's just the same shape as my decorative real metal plate, which is etching at that moment. And I did this because I want to keep this surface that it's covering plain wood, so I can use epoxy glue later to get good traction, good grip to glue the metal plate on top of it, because I'm about to plastidip this whole thing. I also use some regular duct tape to cover up these sides here where the crystal will be attached later too. So all the parts I don't want plastidipped, I'm covering now. Then I use plastidip, which is a liquid rubber plastic kind of thing. In Germany there is also gummidip, you can also use that. So what it does is, well, it's a rubber coat, thick one. Obviously use breath protection, respiratory protection when working with anything like this. Meanwhile, this is done. This is done electro etching beautifully and deeply, and with this sort of irregular effect, which is just perfect for what I'm doing, because it's supposed to look not entirely technological and perfect, but like kind of magic, ooga booga kind of thing. I use some diluted acrylic paint here with a sponge, and I just smear it all over the place, and then I wipe it off gently without wiping it off from the deep parts. I wipe it off just from the top parts. And then I sheen the metal a bit with using a polishing fleece, I think it's called. You can also use sandpaper or something like this. Basically, I make the darks darker and the brights brighter, ending up with a result like this. So here are the both plates. You notice they're slightly different in shape. The one is for the lid, this one I believe, and the other one is for the backside. Could have done different logos, but was just out of time, and I like the logo. So here we have our plastidipped part, and then I apply this chrome paint to it. It's a kind of a bad photo and blurry here, but you see what's going on. So here is my plastidipped and chromed main part here, and here are the real metal pieces. You can barely tell the difference in the photo, I believe. Now I'm peeling off this protective piece, and as you see, the wood here is untouched, providing nice grip for the epoxy. That's what it will look like when I apply it. Then I do apply the epoxy and put some weights on top of it. I did not use my kettlebell here because, I don't know, I just didn't want to crush anything accidentally, so it's like half a kettlebell weight. And epoxy doesn't need that much weight anyway. Here it is, and so far looks a bit horrible with this seam right here and all this tape and all that. So I'm removing the tape now. So this is the lid right here. I'm cutting through the plastidip actually, which is connecting the lid and the rest of the construction, which it's not supposed to. Cutting carefully so don't tear it and peel it off. And that's what it looks like. I mean, it's alright. I also applied some grunge effect here, like some acrylic wash again, just so that the recess holes and stuff, that they get this dirt in them. But the whole thing, I mean, it looks alright, but just design-wise, it looks so barren, just like a chunk of metal. Bam! Which is okay, but you know. And it obviously looks unfinished because of this duct tape here and obvious wood, even if it's covered already. but I know what it is. Doesn't look quite that bad from the other side. Again with the freaking mirror thing, which I applied to it and then removed again. And here's the part when I'm using worbla crystal art. I'm using a silicone muffin form to knead it. I'm using my heat gun and I'm using my gloves. Let me just play you a video of it.
So what I've done here is heating up some of this worbla crystal art stuff with my heat gun. And while wearing gloves, or while I should have been wearing gloves, used my fingers to attach it here to the side of the plywood. So here are a lot of open fibers, and it sticks surprisingly well. Now I cannot remove it. I can remove it if I really try hard to do so, but it's stuck there kind of like a glue. So this is better mounted in place than, or same well mounted in place as the rest of the construction. So this is the way I'm gonna do it. Just attach more and more of this crystal in multiple goes along the ridge here.
Yeah, so piece by piece I'm adding pieces of this crystal. Now this process was almost as tedious as the frog stencil thing, and you see it coming live. Here I've tested how good it holds just to the butt of this wooden frame, 1/2 centimeter thick. Holds, as I've said, surprisingly well. Crystal taking more and more shape. Now you guys are just watching this grow. For me it was like half a day worth of work. And there it is. Finally, now already looks a lot better with this other material in the game, not just the bare metal. Now it's time to put in some diffusing foil. You can get it, I guess, in some Christmas decoration stores or whatever. It's just, I got this from a construction store. It's designed for windows. It's called also Milchfolie or milk foil in German. There are also professional diffuser foils for photographers. Basically what it does, it diffuses light, because I don't want to see the LED dots. I want it to be as diffuse inside of the crystal as possible. I knead it a bit, I wrinkle it so that it's, you know, more chaotic. And I put it inside. I see that I've squeezed it in, it's lining the insides of that, not perfectly, but I tried to get as much coverage as possible. I should have left more space between those spacers and the crystal in terms of, you know, thickness, this to this direction from the inside, because at some points it was difficult to squeeze those LEDs in. What I'm doing here is just a small test. Couldn't wait to see how my crystal looks with the LEDs behind it, and it looked freaking amazing, and that gave me additional power to continue doing it on the same day, squeezing in, putting in those LEDs. So each one of those LED strips, I was able to push it in one time like this, turn it around and push it back around the other way. And there was no more space left. Like, it was so tightly squeezed at a couple of choke points. So that is definitely a thing to do. Like, whenever you're making props, always, if you somehow can, give yourself a bit of slack in spaces where you know they might get tight, because they will. So here are all the LED strips twice put inside of it, and all this cable salad going on. I've used some judo mats, which is EVA foam basically, to cushion out all of the electronics and to soft press them to each other and to the outsides, to the box, so they don't rattle inside and thus get damaged, so it all sits nice and tight in there. Especially the audio board, I gave it an EVA sandwich to protect it further. You can see this duct tape right here, which is holding the slot in place. I also gave it a zip tie, because the last thing I wanted to do on LARP is repair this thing. And here is all the cable salad squeezed in with those cables, also serving as additional rubberized cushioning for the whole thing. And then we add the lid on top, add some rust effects. I've done other videos about rust effects. I also done video about design basics, or a bunch of videos about design basics, as to why it's a good idea to add a material diversity, as you can see here, as well as color contrast. So we have metal, rusty metal, crystal, fabric red, fabric green, leather. That's a lot of materials, and as you can see, this looks just so much better than the bare metal piece that it was before. And now let's look again at the finished pictures of it glowing. And while you're looking at it, please let me ask you to support me on Patreon if you are a regular viewer of this channel. It's the second link in the video description. The first link in the video description leads to the Nuclear Snail community group on Facebook, which is really cool. You can show your stuff, get feedback, hang around. And also you can find the SparkFun link below my links in the video description. I will see you in the next episode, and until then, hail the frog.